Hello, hello, and welcome back to the latest Forza Italian football podcast, the only Italian football podcast coming to you from inside Italy and bringing you to the games every single week. I am your host, Conor Clancy, returning just about after an absolutely chaotic 24 hours in which I saw 3 games. And joining me this week, someone is just as sick as me, Pogorzelski. Kev, hello.
Hi Connor, how you doing?
Did the extra
Uh,
24 hours give you enough time to recover?
It did an early night and lots of fluid last night seems to have done the trick.
Don't talk to me about an early night. Do not talk to me about an early night and Trenitalia because I couldn't get back after the game from Milan to Parma. The next train for me to get was at 5:15 in the morning. So I was just hanging out in a bar until then, and then I had to walk halfway across the city and get a train. I left my house yesterday morning at 8:30. I got back at 7 o'clock this morning. So I am dead. Absolutely dead. Anyway, Vito, I hope you're able to bring more energy to the podcast this week than Kev and I.
Well, I'm hoping so. On the weekend, I went away because it was my sister's wedding, so at least one sibling out of the two is married. But yeah, I think it's probably going to be more negative energy on my part. So I might even squeeze a veto event. So let's see how this goes.
Yeah, your boys managed to achieve one of the most remarkable results of the weekend, but achieve is probably the wrong word there. Right, guys, let's start with the last of the 3 games I was at, which was the last game to be played in Serie A this weekend. It was at San Siro. AC Milan beat Cagliari 3-0, and this game was done after 23 minutes. I want to start with the guy I spoke most about in my post-match video for the site, Christoph Piontek. He was pomming again, Kev. He's unbelievable.
Yeah, he is. You've got to start believing the hype about this guy, really. And I think that he's been a bit power, and determination, but the coolness with which he sort of collected the ball and then just sort of slipped it between the gap between the Cagliari defenders was just brilliant to see, really. It's sort of that extra bit of confidence, I suppose, he's got now after the start to his season.
It really is. When the ball dropped to him, I wasn't quite aware that it was him. I just knew it was one of Milan's attacking players, and I was thinking this guy's just gonna hit it and it'll be blocked. But as soon as he took that first, I was thinking, all right, it's Piontek. They're okay, and he really did deserve that goal because in the first half he didn't really have much of an opportunity to actually test Cranio, but he was just always in the right place. I said it again that Piccata got his goal, but it was only because Calabria seemed to overhit a cross that looked as though it was aimed at Piontek. And his movement was just so good. One thing that struck me was before this game, he had scored with each of his 3 shots on target for Milan, and he had 1 shot before scoring. So I think that's now 4 goals from 5 shots, which is just, it's sensational. And Vito, we've spoken about this guy since the beginning of the season. Obviously, I think this is the 6th time I've seen him play in the flesh, and every single time I see him, he's impressed me. And is it only going to get better for him?
Unfortunately, we've seen far too many one-season wonders or two-season wonders in Serie A. But on the basis of what we've seen from him this season, he just looks like a natural scorer. He doesn't look like one of those guys that has to do well in a specific system or game plan. He just knows how to be in the right positions. He's a very clinical finisher. So I'm hoping that he's not one of those guys that can only do well for a couple of years. He looks like a guy that has the potential to become world class and become a genuine star of the game.
Well, you would think so, right? Because Genoa aren't a good team. I think we can all say that. And he was feeding on scraps there. And even with 4 goals for Milan, he's not exactly being served all that well. But he just keeps scoring. If Çalhanoğlu had the ability to pass the ball to a teammate, or Suso didn't switch off after December every single year, he might even have more goals already for Milan. He's so exciting, and it's really good. And he is absolutely adored at San Siro as well. When he came on for his debut against Napoli in the Coppa, I was at that as well. And I was amazed by just how loudly they roared his name. And this was the game that they didn't They did. Oh no, it was the Serie A game that he came on for that I was at. Dolph was at the Coppa game. But yeah, it's unbelievable how quickly they've taken to him there, and he seems to love it. You can see the way he's reacting when they're doing the call and response for his name before the game and after he scores. And I do think Milan fans are going to get used to shouting the name Piontek a lot more between now and May, and hopefully for his sake into next season as well. Another one of the new signings then who impressed and who was the focus of our player ratings and most of Gennaro Gattuso's post-match press conference was Lucas Piccata, and he was the scorer of their second goal. He played very well. He was quite visibly moved after scoring the second, understandably, given what's happened at his former club Flamengo in the last week. And Gattuso said that he's a guy who plays with his heart. And Kev, he's showing that. He's showing that he's got this Brazilian flair. He seems like a joy.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit surprised. As I was saying off air before we went live, I went over to Rio in October to watch the Rio derby between Flamengo and Fluminense, and I saw Paqueta in that, and it must have been about a week to 2 weeks after the AC Milan deal had been announced, and I don't know whether he was then downing tools in the Brazilian league. I dare say it wasn't a great fixture. You know, they pretty much wiped the floor with their opposition, but he had this sort of kind of language style, not really interested in the play, and it's been completely different at Milan, really. And it's good to see, because I kind of thought he was going to struggle with if you like, the competitive nature of the league, if he was going to go missing, like you alluded to, Suso tends to do after the festivities.
One thing I have noticed with Piccata is that his decision making isn't always that good. He does sometimes try to do a party trick when a more simple option would suffice, and maybe that's something that will eventually be kind of beaten out to him. Beaten out of him rather by Gattuso, but hopefully not. Vito, I want to talk about Frank Kessie, because I don't think we speak about him enough. When he was at Atalanta, we spoke about him quite a lot, obviously, and when he moved to Milan at first. But this is a guy who, if he misplaces one pass, everyone, well, not everyone, but there's a certain group of Milan fans and others who chastise him and criticize him and are quick to jump on him. But he plays an insane number of minutes, an insane amount of games, and he's so important for this Milan.
He's probably the one with the most stamina in the team, or the greatest work ethic in the team. His ball control and all that hasn't been all that crash hot. But that being said, he's playing in two different styles. I mean, playing at Atalanta is one thing with Gasparini and his well-defined system, whereas Gattuso is not like that in his coaching. With this team, I think there's a bit more reliance on the individuals to play to the strengths. Kessie is not scoring goals like he did at Atalanta, but he's probably someone that's the closest to what Gattuso was as a player. Gattuso was known for that fighting spirit and work ethic, and I'm not saying Kessie is at Gattuso's level, but he has those attributes. And maybe if we did a bit more better on the ball, then maybe those critics will get off his back, especially if the team in general pushes up for the Champions League spots.
That's one thing that I do think he has regressed with, actually, at Milan, is his technical ability or lack of. Because at Atalanta, it was never an issue. Him and Roberto Gagliardini were often in midfield together, and both now look quite inept on the ball at times. But at Atalanta, it was never really an issue. Maybe it was because they didn't have as much time in the ball with as much license to create, because Gasp's sides have always gone through a number 10 and the two wing backs. But anyway, Kev, someone, speaking of fullbacks, actually, Davide Calabria, who was spoken about in the post-match press conference afterwards by Gattuso, and he was asked if he thought the right back was underrated, and Gattuso said, I hope so, and I hope it stays that way, because then we can keep him. He's never spoken about. It is a loss that they don't have Conte available to them, at least if he can rediscover his Atalanta form. But Kev, Davide Calabria has done quite a nice job quite quietly there.
Yeah, I wrote a piece on him in the start of the season, I think, or maybe it was the end of it, might even been the end of last season after he'd scored against Roma, saying just how well he'd done there. And then the start of this year again, you're not sure whether he's just been quiet or just been going about his business with sort of ruthless efficiency. Abate now is probably a million miles away from actually taking over that right back berth. And you just wonder with Conte's return to fitness in the last few weeks whether that has pushed Calabria on a little, because he looked a little bit too comfortable, if you like. And you just see the way that Conte attacks from full back, and it's maybe made Calabria realise that he needs to add that to his game. He was certainly getting up and down the flank on Sunday evening.
It was, I think, around the time Conte looked like he was going to come back last season, where Calabria pushed on again. So there's probably something in that, you know. Another thing from the stands was obviously Christoph Piontek has his song, which is fantastic. It's really nice to hear. But they've given Bakayoko one as well, which shows just how much he's turned things around at San Siro in the last couple of months. Anyway, moving on, we'll go to Reggio Emilia, where Sassuolo were beaten quite handily by Juventus 3-0. Seems to be the score of the round, really. Vito, this was just Juventus swatting aside a mid-table side.
That was pretty much the reality of the situation. Sassuolo did have a few chances, especially before Juve took the lead. But ultimately, you do have to take those chances, especially against the Bianconeri, because they have the quality to punish you. And that's what happened with Sassuolo. Sassuolo do play nice football, but means very little if you can't put the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah, and losing Prince is not going to do them any favors. Kev, we've spoken about Emre Can and Sami Khedira at times, but both scored this weekend. Do you think either of them can offer anything positive to this Juventus team for the rest of the season?
Well, I know Khedira gets quite a lot of criticism, I think, and I've certainly been critical of Emre Can from what I saw at Liverpool and what I think he'll actually give Juventus moving forward. I think the criticism of Khedira, you have to remind yourself constantly how much he's won, the teams that he's played for, the experience that he's going to bring if Juventus are looking to take that next step in the Champions League. And unfortunately, I think it's a bit of when you've got Pjanic next to you and then you've got the industry of Matuidi, he's the best of the worst of a good bunch, and that's why maybe he comes under so much criticism. I think he can still play quite a crucial role if they're gonna take that final step in the Champions League this season. And he does pop up with the odd goal. I know Chan scored at the weekend, but that's not something particularly that you're going to get from Chan very often.
No, he's definitely not a goal scorer, is he? But yeah, my opinion on Khedira changes every week as well, to be honest with you. And it frustrates me because sometimes you see him and you think, all right, he's quite an intelligent guy, he knows what he's doing. And then sometimes you see him and you just think, how is this guy still playing for Juventus? And he seems to fluctuate a little bit too much, little bit more than he perhaps should. I'm looking for... No, never mind. Okay, Vito, Daniele Rugani, he played. Adam Digby, friend of the podcast, wrote a piece about him in the week to say that this could potentially be one of his last chances to impress with their defensive issues. And it started badly for him, but after that he was comfortable enough. And do you think that Rugani is going to take this chance? Because he's probably going to get a series of games now.
On the basis of last week's game against Parma, I would have said no. This week's game, I would not be confident enough to say yes. I'm just going to say maybe for now. So I'll do a bit of fence sitting. Rugani's been at the club for a good 4 seasons. So it makes me wonder, when is he going to take the next step? Or is it a case that Allegri's never going to trust him or whatnot? So with Rugani, he must take this chance if he really wants to stay at Juve or be a starter, but he comes across as a guy that just looks happy to sit on the bench and collect all the trophies without doing much. If he was someone who really wanted to make something out of his career and really improve his game, I acknowledge that you can learn a lot from Bonucci and Chiellini, but I think you can't beat match experience and getting game time. I think he hasn't had a lot of that in the last 4 years. So I think when the pressure really comes, that's where he might get exposed. And if he doesn't take his chances now, he should seriously consider leaving Juventus. Forget this stuff that he's going to be the heir to Chiellini or Bonucci. If he was ready, he would have been ready years ago.
Yeah, well, Adam actually quoted a press conference line from Allegri where he said, "Make no mistake, this guy is the future of Juventus." But the problem is that quote came in, I think, 2015. So, yeah, things aren't going too well for him. Anyway, Parma 0 Inter won the first of the games I was at this weekend. Kev, Lautaro Martinez is all right, isn't he?
He took his goal really well. I only saw the highlights, but the pressure he was under from the defender, and he's almost fallen off balance when he sort of strikes the ball home. I thought was really impressive. I was just a little surprised about the result after um, Parma did so well at the Juventus Stadium, and Inter were coming off the back of the Bologna result, and you thought, well, they might be there for the taking at the Tardini.
I really fancy Parma because of, as you said, that result last week and the way Inter have been playing. But after about 15 minutes, it seemed clear that Inter were the better team. It just seemed like they were either going to win it or really, really regret another one of those afternoons where they didn't try anything new. They just kept trying crosses into the box that weren't working. And eventually it told, and it wasn't from a cross that they got their goal. I think they had 18 crosses in the first half, which seemed crazy because Bastoni and Bruno Alves were just eating them up. Bruno Alves has this amazing way of attacking a header. It looks like a dog when you've thrown meat in the air. He just runs at it and jumps. But it was never happening for them. And then eventually it was Rajan Angolan who broke up play really well from Juraj Kucka, did well to slip a ball through the two defenders. And yeah, I was really impressed with Lautaro's taking of that goal because Jacoponi was on him.
And he got it quite. It was almost back to goal. It wasn't as if Nangolan had slipped it down a channel. He still had to beat the defender.
It was kind of like that Aguero goal that won the league for City a couple of years ago. That's what I thought back to as soon as he did it. It was same sort of skill set on display. Someone who's not been enjoying his time in front of goal lately is Mauro Icardi. Before this game, Vito hadn't scored in 6 games, which was his worst run in Serie A, and now it's 7. And he missed a really, really bad chance in this one from very, very close. And for once, it looks like he's not quite got the confidence that he usually has.
It is rather surprising, but I think this lack of form has been caused by off-field issues. The recent contract speculation once again has resurfaced, and hear all this talk about his agent and his wife Wanda trying to stick her nose in, try to do a better deal. And then Marotta, the new sporting director, has had to give his 2 cents on the situation. So I wonder how much is this impacting on the situation, and if this is a potential catalyst for him to actually leave Inter once and for all.
You think? Kev, what do you make of that?
Oh, I don't know. I could see the reasons why he might want to get away. But then I think he might have pushed for a move before now, and it could just be them positioning themselves for a better payday. To be perfectly honest, I don't know. I just always doubt whether he wants to actually push himself in one of, Inter's a huge club, but someone playing regularly, or let's say competing regularly to win the Champions League. Benzema's probably on coming to the end of his career at Real Madrid, given his age. Why wouldn't they go for somebody like Icardi? But you just wonder whether he still prefers to be that big fish in a relatively small pond, not a ridiculously small pond.
Do you think there's a chance that Icardi just really, really likes Inter?
He might, But how much loyalty do we see with that these days, really?
Loyalty is a good word to use in any conversation discussing Mario Kart as well. But the less said about that, the better,
Yeah.
I think. Vito, do you think Rajan Angolan is back?
I'm not going to get too excited over just the one assist. It was a nice pass to Martinez, but for me, he's got to keep on doing that, whether it be in Serie A or in the Europa League. He's got to continuously provide those kind of assists, those runs into the box, and even chip in with a few goals. I don't expect a return to his Roma form, but maybe next week he'll just go quiet or something. You never know.
I've apparently upset a Milan fan. Sorry, by saying that maybe Calabria wasn't looking for Piccata on the ball, but they didn't have any TVs in my row this week. So sorry about that, angry Milan fan, but it doesn't usually take much to upset you guys, and so you have proven yet again. Daniel has come into the comments to say Romagnoli is better than Rugani. I don't think anyone is doubting that or has doubted that for quite a couple of years now. Rajan Angolan was saying afterwards about how he started to take his life away from football more seriously, which is quite interesting because that was obviously always the thing that was holding him back. He said he never took it seriously, but now he is. So possibly, who knows? Maybe he will have something of an Indian summer, but it could be a little bit too late for him to start looking after himself. The damage could quite possibly be already done. Okay, the second of the games, is that the last that we will speak about, is Atalanta 2, Spal 1. For a long time, it didn't look like it was going to happen for the Bergamaschi. They dominated the first half, but it was an Andrea Petagna goal that was the difference at halftime, and Atalanta were struggling. Despite creating a number of half chances, Spal defended quite well, as they tend to this season under Semplici, and eventually it took an excellent combination from Duvan Zapata and Josip Ilicic to score, and then it was those two who were involved again as Ilicic sent Hateboer down the line, who then picked out Zapata for the winner. And Kev, this was just Atalanta showing that they're a pretty good team. This is a different way for them to win, fighting back from being one down against a tricky defensive opponent, and they managed it.
Yeah, they did well. Because they did really well. They played the game that they usually play, although they did seem to start very nervy. And I wonder if you're a keen follower of Atalanta, and I just wonder if you worry if that's this run in for the Champions League now. They had the chance to go. Well, they did step into fourth place after the win, but you had the nervousness in defence when I can't remember who it was now. One of the defenders misplaced a pass that sort of,
yeah, it was
yeah,
Rafa
and then obviously they go behind to a wonderfully curled in outside of the boot cross for Petagna. And they pulled it back, which is another positive sign. You want to see if they're gonna break this sort of Champions League duck that they've been going for. And I just wondered if nerves were sort of starting to settle in.
I take your point, but I don't think so. They have this tendency against the small teams to almost the smaller teams, because Atalanta aren't a big team by any stretch, to kind of switch off a little bit to begin with. And it does usually take something to get them going against these lesser teams. I have a feeling that they've obviously got a huge game this weekend. They play Milan in Bergamo, which is going to tell us a lot about what happens come the end of the season. Because Atalanta can be fourth at the end of this round of fixtures, which will be quite big with, 24 rounds of fixtures played. And I do think they need to be taken seriously, because we have said a lot that Milan, Roma, Lazio will all drop points, as will Atalanta between now and the end of the season. Fiorentina, Sampdoria, even Torino as well. They're not going to win every game between now and the end.
I think that's a huge test for Milan's midfield.
Yeah, because this is
the movement of the Atalanta front. Let's say four.
It's crazy because it's almost a front five, because you've got the three obvious ones with Papu Gomez, Zapata, and Ilicic. But then in possession, Castagna and Hateboer are nominal forwards as well because they play on the wing. And then they've got this weird thing where one of the centre-backs always joins in an attack. So it's either Toloi, Mancini, or usually Mazziello, but Palomino this season. One of them's always up there because they've got Darun and Freuler who just sit and they are more than happy to not attack for most of the game. But it is going to be a big test, especially if Milan keep playing as they have been in recent weeks with Bakayoko as the only defensive midfielder in that 4-1-4-1. It's going to be quite a game, and we've sent in an accreditation request, but we're hopeful that I'll be there for it. And it'll be hard to stay quiet if something happens in that game. It'll be the biggest test of my professionalism until this point. I do want to give Martin Darun some credit because he's loved in Bergamo, and rightly so. Remo Freuler is someone that I'm a big fan of as well. And I do think part of the reason he looks so good is because he's got Darun beside him. This is someone who's not he's not the creative force, or he's going to drive a team creatively. Oh, I can't speak because creatively. That is the word I've been looking for. Thank you, Kev. He's not the most creative player, but it doesn't matter because he's got players who can do that. All he has to do is give the ball to Ilicic, Gomez, or one of the fullbacks, and they do it for him. Everything he needs to do, he does perfectly. And he never stops. He's unbelievable. And I absolutely adore the guy. I loved him when he was in Serie A at first. I was heartbroken when he left. And I'm very, very happy that he's back. And
he's one of those players that you don't really appreciate unless you're at the game. Because sometimes the cameras pan away, and the amount of games that I sort of see over the course of a season, people always say, "Oh, you could save your money and you could not go to the stadium." You miss the atmosphere, but more importantly, you miss actually seeing what is going on the pitch and see those positional sort of intelligence that people at that, or players at that level have. And he's one of those, and you don't appreciate them until you see them in the flesh.
Absolutely, and I don't want to bang out about it, but this is one of the big things for me about actually being out here this year is you see so much more. You feel it, you feel the atmosphere, you hear it, and you see what's going on almost politically at clubs. But it's exactly that. Seeing how much players offer to their teams that you never realized from watching on TV before. And when you see Atalanta playing, you see one of their defenders joining an attack, and you realize that the two fullbacks are up there as well. You think, oh my, who's actually defending? It's always Darun. He's always there. He just knows instinctively to drop in. He's really good. I absolutely love the guy. And he'd go to the end of the world to defend whatever shirt he's wearing as well, which endears him to any set of supporters, which I'm quite grateful that it didn't quite work out at Middlesbrough with them getting relegated, and he came back. And actually, one of the reasons he's loved at Atalanta is there was a picture of him signing his contract after coming back, and someone just took a photo on their phone through the door. So he obviously didn't know he was being photographed or anything, but he signed his contract and just started doing this. He was so happy to be back. Yeah, what a guy. I was going to talk about Castagna and Hatterberg's improvements, but we'll move on to Fiorentina Napoli. It ended scoreless. Lafont was excellent for Fiorentina, but I want to start with Napoli. Kev, we do have a comment on YouTube on the live stream. It's from CM Fox. Hello. It's been a while since we spoke to you. He says, unpopular opinion, but I think Lorenzo Insigne is vastly overrated. His finishing is substandard to be considered a top player. And Napoli, for all their easy on the eye attacking play, are bottle jobs. Vito, you've been sitting quietly. What do you think of that?
There is an element of truth in that, because when Insigne is on his day, it is a delight to watch, but he tends to disappear in big games, to be honest. And those are the kind of games where he needs to lift. Unfortunately, throughout Napoli's history, aside from when Maradona was playing there in the 80s and very early 90s, were they able to sort of get over those expectations and win trophies? At the moment, obviously, they don't have a legend like him, and they don't even have the support crew that he had. So with the current side, they are overachieving, and Insigne in particular, being a Neapolitan as well, I think there's a bit of pressure on him to perform, but so far he hasn't really stand out, and might be easy to label him a flat track bully in that aspect.
Kev, do you think it's fair to call him a flat track bully?
I think he is far too inconsistent. But there's been times over the last sort of 18 months where he's been one of Napoli's best performers against the if you like top opposition in Italy. Somebody asked me about him at the weekend while I was in Liverpool because apparently they've been linked with him and the valuation was 150 million euros. And just, I was just astounded at that sort of, that sort of amount for him. It sounded like agent talk, if anything, really.
Yeah, it's hard to put a rational evaluation on anyone's head at the moment, though. But Insigne is someone who's frustrated me a lot throughout the years because he does have that inconsistency and immaturity at times. But this season, it looked for so long like Ancelotti had kind of thumped that out of him or nicely chatted that out of him. So I don't know. It is hard to know. Maybe it's just normal for a player to not be able to deliver sensational results every single week, which is something that I think is detrimental to having both Leo Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo exist at the same time, is that all of our standards have just become so inflated that everything gets compared to them. If one of those players was around or neither, I think Lorenzo Insigne will be one of the players that people like to watch every single week. But because we've got these two guys who are flawless, everyone else is just substandard. And I don't know, maybe having those two guys around is a curse to everyone else. Another Daniel has come in the comments to say that Insigne's biggest limitation is that he's a mediocre athlete, which I think is quite harsh because he's just a number 10, isn't he? He's a number 10 that plays in Italian football. They're not always the best athletes. Even the likes of Papu Gomez and that, they're not the most athletic. Kaká, when he was here, maybe too, but I'm not sure. Anyway, what have we got? Let's go. Carlo Ancelotti, Vito. Because Maurizio Sarri is getting a lot of flack for the job he's doing in London. But Ancelotti took over from him at Napoli, and at the moment, he's 8 points worse off than Napoli were at this time last season. He's been knocked out of the Champions League, and he's been knocked out of the Coppa Italia already. Is there a problem?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a problem with the coaches. One thing you can look at is that Juventus have had an incredible start to the season, and they've been able to maintain that. And the Bianconeri have not lost a game this season. So regardless if it's Napoli or anyone else, Juventus are very far ahead at the moment. If it's just a matter of tactics, well, Sarri's team was definitely more pleasing on the eye. That's for certain in my view. But in terms of results, I think it's really just a case of what coaches can get out of their squad. Sarri has his methods, Ancelotti has his. But ultimately, I think it's up to squad quality. And really, if you really had to blame people, you could blame the sporting director, Giuntoli, and the president, De Laurentiis, for perhaps being a bit frugal and not splashing out enough. But in both situations, Sarri came second last season, Ancelotti second now. Neither coach did well in the Coppa Italia. Europe, nothing out of the ordinary. So I think it's really just a case of, just the quality of the players at their disposal. And you can only do so much if you've got players that aren't consistent enough or really going to give you that big jump in quality to make you win trophies.
Speaking of consistency, Kev, go.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, I think you've got to question the squad motivation. From almost the start of the season, Juventus have been flying. They're now in a position where Juve are, nearly 10 points away, 11 points away. They're not being pushed from behind them either. So they know they're going to finish, second, effectively without having to put too much effort in. Their best performance, I'd argue, actually came in the Champions League this year, when that was maybe something that they could go out for, and it remains to be seen how much they're going to put the effort into the Europa League this week. But they've just got nothing to play for in in Serie A, and no one really challenging them to push them on. And after 2 years of really going hell for leather under Maurizio Sarri.
Hmm. Yeah, it's this. I don't know. It's hard to know what to say about Napoli at times because any criticism of them or their individuals does seem really, really harsh given what they are up against. But we're gonna have to try and do that when I ask you, Kevin, about Dries Mertens, because as another comment has raised, his form has fallen off some way as well.
Or just gone back to norm. We always talk about a one season wonder. Sometimes players can have sort of 18 month to 2 year patches where they're just on fire. And I imagine, not without looking at the stats, I imagine his goal average has gone back to what it roughly was before he got pushed to a central role.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking for something where there probably isn't
I think because
anything.
I think I wrote a piece at the end of that season where he was so phenomenal. Well, Milik was out that I can't remember who was coming in looking at him potentially to purchase him, and I said they should sell because he will eventually revert back to his sort of norm, and they should have cashed in really because there was some stupid numbers flying around for him.
One of the
I
things
think,
he
mate,
go Vito.
I was going to say, I think I read one rumor that Manchester United were interested in him and they were offering something as high as 35 million euros. So that would have been crazy money for a player that was over 30 years old,
Is that now or back when he was amazing?
back when he
It
was
was that,
amazing.
yeah,
Uh,
he had like 1 year left on his contract, and I think he eventually settled with a new deal at Napoli. But
can you
it was
imagine how bad he'd be in a Mourinho team? By the way, that would be horrendous. But him at United now would be quite fun. Um,
Yeah, it would be actually, especially under Solskjaer. Even Paul Pogba's playing consistently.
Imagine that one of the best players in the world is good when the ball is at his feet and not flying over his head. It's a shock
Very
that.
true.
One thing that Mertens does bring though is he brings the best out of the others because again, as we were saying, Kev, positionally he's very good. He makes the right runs. Him and Insigne and Callejon have a great understanding, and I'm not sure if Napoli's front line would be as good if you took him out of it and replaced him with someone else on a long-term basis. But anyway, Fiorentina, Lafont was excellent in goal. He got our Forza Italian Football Player of the Week this week, Kev. And he is kind of representative of Fiorentina's best strength this year, maybe, which is how good they've been defensively at times.
Yeah, I must. I was going to be a little harsh then and say that some of the Napoli finishing was straight at him, but I've been really impressed with him this year. And I remember sitting down to the early game, I think, against Chieva a few weeks ago, and thinking, oh, like look at this chap. And then he played that awful pass that eventually got ruled out, and I thought, oh, I've gone and jinxed him. But no, defensively, Fiorentina have been sound this year, and obviously they lost a big part of their defence last year, but you just wonder if it swung too much the other way because they seem to have lost a lid or something going forward. Obviously, Simeone's having a awful season, really.
Yeah, yeah, quite possibly. Anyway, I've just realized the time, so we'll move on through this a little bit quickly. Vita Roma beat Chievo 3-0 away from home. I'm not going to start saying Roma are back because it was Chievo, but this is an important win for them.
Absolutely. I think it's an ideal confidence booster heading into the Champions League tie with Porto. Pardon me. And also, it was good to see also Stefan El Shaarawy and Edin Dzeko in particular play very good games. So hopefully they can take that form into the round of 16 tie.
Yeah, Dzeko just getting warmed up for the competition that he's actually contracted to play in this season, it seems, because at the beginning of the year he was non-existent in Serie A, but was doing all right in Europe. The other side of Rome, Kev, Lazio beat Empoli 1-0 on Thursday night, quite annoyingly, but job done.
Do you know why that was, Connor?
I actually don't, I will confess.
Ah, the Six Nations,
Was it?
I believe so.
That's a bit annoying.
It wasn't until I was sat in the pub on Saturday afternoon and I saw where Wales were taking on the Italian rugby union side that I realised that must have been why they played on Thursday, because I missed the game completely. I won't lie, until I saw the highlights, because I just didn't realise it was on Thursday night.
Yeah, I had forgotten about it as well. So our Serie A preview actually went up on the
But
Friday, and I was just hoping that no little annoying Twitter person commented, Serie A started yesterday. Thankfully, I think we got away with it.
But they got the job done. But again, they're just sort of going nowhere. Everybody else in front of them at the moment is still picking up those points. I just can't see them breaking into the Champions League, what they've so desperately craved the last few seasons, and obviously got close to very much last year.
Do you think that Lazio would do anything in Europe if they got to the Champions League, or would they just be stripped of everyone and then it'd be a makeshift B team that took on the Champions League next season?
Well, wow, they might be stripped of a lot of their assets, but I don't know. It's difficult now that Italy get the 4 group stage places, and with the seeding, most sides from Europe's top 4 leagues really should be able to get themselves into the knockout stages, and then it's anybody's game really.
Most sides should, Kev. Yeah, but Italian.
But yeah, but it's
don't
Inter
qualify
don't,
for that.
and
Inter and
Napoli
Napoli.
don't, and
Inter, who have spent I don't know how much money in the last few years to challenge for Europe again. But let's not get into that, because I annoyed people by saying that Italian teams should have done better in Europe this year. Bologna won, Genoa won. Pretty bad game, Vito, that was made look exciting by the last few minutes.
Pretty much. In the last 10 minutes, Bologna were really pushing for the win. They got quite a few corners, and the best chances fell to the centre-back Danilo. But Ionel Turadu, not just in those 10 minutes, but throughout the game, he performed very well in the Genoa goals. So I reckon that the Grifoni can thank him for bringing a point back to Genoa.
Kev, Torino won again. They beat Udinese 1-0, which reminds me, Vito is going to have something written about Torino coach Mazzari going up this week. But they don't get a lot of love, because Mazzari is very much not a popular person at the moment because of the way he sets his teams up. But they're 8th. They are just 4 points off the 5th place, just 5 points off the Champions League. And surely he deserves some credit.
Yeah, well, they were quite lucky with the awful penalty though. As much as it was saved by the keeper, it was really quite poor. It was the right height. It was nowhere near within the corners. But I was quite pleased to see. I will get the pronunciation wrong, but is it Anya?
Yeah,
the goal scorer.
Hang on.
Ola Aina.
Anya. Yeah.
I've gone Aina because that's how they say it here.
Aina, yeah. Well, we've spoken to the young man.
Yeah, I know twice.
So it's Aina. Okay, I'll try and remember that one. But he's done really well. There's lots of English players never leave these shores and test themselves out. And he's not gone to a particularly, if you like, popular league for English players, with a lot of youngsters going to the Bundesliga.
Kev.
And to see him score,
Kev,
really good.
You're such a little Englander right now. He plays for Nigeria, mate.
But he's come through the Chelsea youth ranks.
I take your point. I think
a lot of them don't leave. Okay, so English-based youngsters don't leave that comfort bubble of, the money and and all the facilities and everything they've got. And it's really nice to see somebody actually going, the Premier League isn't the be-all and end-all, and let's go and try ourselves out in Italy, which is obviously a wonderful country to live in. I'm sure you're finding that, and I'm sure he is. But it was just nice because he's performed really, really well this year. It's not often I'm old and miserable now. It's not often that things give me a little bit of warmth in my heart, and seeing him just really happy to score that goal was really nice.
Yeah, and from what Vieri and Dove have said of him this year, he is a really, really nice guy. So we're all behind him. I'd like to see him do well, and maybe he'll rock up to Bergamo next year when Torino miss out on Europe and Atalanta are there taking on Real Madrid. Who knows? Anyway, let's move on from that. Where have we got? Vito, I'm sorry. I'm very, very sorry, but explain your boys. Sampdoria 0, Frosinone won. And that is the right order because Sampdoria were at home.
It's unbelievable. Look, credit to Marco Baroni, the new Frosinone coach, for improving things at that club recently. They look more confident and organized with him than what they were under Moreno Longo. But when you have 72.4% possession and you're walking around like a bunch of snails, you don't deserve to win. It's that saying, possession is futile. You can have all the possession you want, but you've got to put the ball in the back of the net. Not only that, Sampdoria can't keep relying on Quagliarella. Marco Sal and Manolo Gabbiadini arrived in the January transfer window. The players are there, so it's time that you've got to be consistent, get over the Napoli loss, and start getting back to winning ways. Even if we got to play Inter next week, doesn't matter. If we really want Europe, if we believe in it, got to put the ball in the back of the net. Nice and simple. Otherwise, one of our loyal listeners, Doria boy, is hashtagging Gianpaolo out. The only way I'll endorse that, though, is if we don't make Europe. It's his third season, Gianpaolo. He's got to aim for Europe. Otherwise, we need a fresh start.
Do you think the incredible run of form that Fabio Quagliarella had overshadowed some underlying problems?
I would say yes, because Gregoire Defro had an amazing start to the campaign, but he's dropped off since. It also doesn't help that Gianluca Caprari is out for some time. He's going to be back around the end of March with I think, a leg injury. And look, one of the main problems with Samp under Gianpaolo is that the fullbacks are rather vulnerable defensively. And we were missing Nicola Muro for this game. Tavares, the Brazilian youngster, came in. He struggled on the left there. So when the players get injured, it does not help your situation. But that being said, when you have lots of possession, move the ball slow, it gives the opponent enough time to set up. And that's what Frosinone did. And Raman Chipsa had an incredible game for them. He could not, he cut off a lot of our supply.
I think Sam Fox is doing his usual trolling effort by going a little bit extreme in his analysis of the Sampdoria situation. He says, Samp's season has been turned into a one-man quest in this Quagliarella goal streak run. Now they've got nothing. Nothing might be a little strong. But Kev, do you think Gianpaolo should get the sack if they don't get it into Europe?
I'm one against really sacking coaches a little bit too prematurely. You've got to remember what's in front of them. Vito obviously is a passionate Samp follower, so I think that comes across in his. Are we going to call it his Vito rant?
No, that wasn't a rant. I think that was okay.
But yeah, no, I think it would be a little harsh on them. They have played some good football this year, and I think they are attempting to sort of break into those European places.
Yeah,
it's just those sides that are on a little bit of a slump. You could argue your Lazios and Roma just aren't dropping enough points for somebody to sort of slide in front of them.
Yeah, Vito, you're being too harsh on your boys. Give them a chance. If they lose to Inter and then go on to lose against Cagliari after that, and then things keep spiraling and they lose to Spal away, then the gloves are off. You can say whatever you want about Gianpaolo on here, but give them a couple of weeks.
And when's the derby? Surely there's a derby to lose soon.
There must be one. Although
there's one more.
I did look.
It's towards the end, I think. If I remember, it was towards the end of the first round of fixtures. I'm trying to find it now, but the internet. Oh,
we drew 1-1.
It's on the 14th of April. Well, the weekend of the 14th. Those fixtures aren't set yet, but that'll be an evening game on the Saturday, so probably 13th, I would imagine. So that'll be fun. Anyway,
he's never lost a derby.
There you go. So there's still hope. Quagliarella will score in that and every game between now and then, possibly. Right, Vito, back to you, because we did have a tweet on Twitter which brought something to our attention that we should really discuss, which is the situation at Palermo, because they're in Serie B now. They were looking like everything was good. They were going to get promoted. They are still fighting at the top of the table. I think they're just 1 point. Yeah, they're 1 point behind Brescia, who lead the Serie B table. But it's all gone pear-shaped.
Yes, it has, unfortunately. There's been a lack of clarity on the ownership situation because in December last year, Zamparini had sold the club to the Sport Capital Investments Group from the UK. So people like David Platt and Dean Holdsworth or Holdingsworth were involved in the new ownership, but it doesn't seem like the new owners are who they really are. The current board has resigned, and also Maurizio has been put under house arrest. And one of the reasons was for money laundering. Recently, one of the defenders, Giuseppe Bellusci, has come out and he was apparently in tears when he said this, that he's not sure if the players are going to get the wages from the last 2 months. So from some reports, it looks like February 15 will be the critical date as to when Palermo will find out if the players are going to get paid or if the club is even going to be in existence, because they've been trying to look for new owners, but there's been a local Italian businessman that was involved. Trying to see his name, Raffaele Folieri. That's been abandoned. And there were talks of an American group joining board, but it doesn't look like they're going to be involved in an acquisition of the club. So unfortunately, it looks like Palermo are in dire straits, and we could see a similar situation to what Parma were in back in 2014 and 2015.
The thing about it being Palermo, though, it's almost more ominous because they're from Sicily, and there's not a lot of money around there. At least with Parma, they're a northern team. Parma's a very rich, wealthy city. There's always a chance that they can get investment from the local area and make it work. But just look at the south for representation in the top leagues of Italian football. It's non-existent. Even Napoli, who are the big team in the south, are a bit of a mess. Really, you look at the stadium.
The sad thing about it all, just with the South in general, it comes down to that old stereotype. Even if there's no clear influence, but you don't have to be, an Italian to work out that, you can always suspect somehow the mafia is involved. Maurizio Zamparini, he's from northeastern Italy in origin, but you never know who's involved with these clubs, The genuine ownership of the board and all that. With Southern Italian clubs, it's just that stigma that has remained for years, and it's easy to make such speculations. So that's the great shame, because there's a huge diaspora, and a lot of Italian immigrants originate from the South. So even though quite a lot support the big boys from the North, I'm sure some of them do feel that they have a soft spot for where their parents and grandparents came from and would like to see them do better than what they are doing. And it's a shame for Palermo, because they are a historically rich city, even though financially it's not that rich. So, and they've provided some interesting memories throughout the last decade or two. So it'd be a shame if they went down.
Absolutely. I do know a couple of people from Sicily and specifically Palermo. And hopefully I will see them here this week just to get a chat and see how they feel about it all. But Kevin, it would be a real shame if things went completely wrong for them and they ended up having to start over.
Yeah, it would. And as Vito sort of alluded to, you just around yourself, or you just wonder how long it would take them to come back, because they don't have that sort of support network, if you like, that Parma had. I went to Sicily a few years back, and oddly enough, for Forza Italian football, and covered the Juventus and Napoli game at Catania. And it was when there was that one's in Serie A while the other's lying lowly elsewhere. And you really want to see both of them do really well, Palermo and Catania, to bring, that derby back to the top flight, because it is a very passionate region for their football. But you can understand how people get a little bit frustrated with the outside involvement in their clubs, particularly if it, leads to this sort of disappointing situation.
Yeah, but you look at Catania now, and they're fourth in their division of Serie C, and it does look more likely at the moment that derby, the Sicilian derby, if it is to be played again in the near future, will be in Serie C rather than Serie A, which is a real shame. A real shame. Anyway, guys, on that note, we will.
On that depressing note.
Yeah, we will leave it. We will leave it. So, Kev, Vito, thank you for getting through this with me this week.
Thank you for
Welcome.
having me.
And I hope to speak to you both next week after being hopefully at Atalanta Milan. And I will be somewhere else as well. I think I'm at San Siro next week as my confirmed game. So we'll be back on Sunday night. I don't know from where. But until then, head over to ForzaItalianFootball.com for all of your Italian football coverage. You can read Vito's piece. And we've got a number of pieces actually scheduled to go up this week. So head over there and read all about them. We are at the games every single week. I think there's a big, exciting round coming up at the beginning of March. So definitely make sure you're on the site for that. And yeah, get us on Instagram at Forza Italian Football, Twitter at Serie A FFC, and on everything Forza Italian Football on Facebook as well. So until next time, all there is for me to say is ciao for now.